Hello, guys, and welcome to Odds on Europa League. The second European competition is back on Thursday. We have the playoffs. We have very good games, 8 very good games, and we are going to analyze every single one of them with, of course, Alvaro Romeo and Daniele Fisichella. Hello, guys.
Hello, guys. How are you?
All good. This looks like a mini Champions League, to be honest. There are so many good games, and we have big guns in Europe playing on Thursday. So let's analyze all 8 games with Alvaro, with Danny. Remember also that we want to know your opinion, so leave your comments, your tips, and of course, if you enjoy the video, just press the like and subscribe. And now let's go on with the show. Some fixtures look better than some of the Champions League ones, to be honest. So let's start with the 4 games we have at 6:45 Central European time. Ajax Union Berlin is the first one for Ajax. Danny, it's been a tough season so far. They are third in the Eredivisie, although still fighting for the title. It was a bit disappointing, the Champions League they made with Liverpool, with Napoli in the group stages. And be careful because they face Union Berlin, one of the best teams in Europe so far. And after the World Cup, they are playing really well. They are getting very good results. So this could be dangerous for Ajax.
It could be. It's a very interesting tie, I would say. Probably, apart from Barcelona, Man United, the most interesting tie of this knockout round. By the way, I had a quick count. In this knockout round of the Europa League, there are 15 European Cups Champions League winners, 15 titles, and a few finalists as well, the likes of Monaco. So obviously, lot of pedigree, lot of history in these ties between the European elite teams, for sure. Ajax Union Berlin. Ajax, we know they are in transition. They sacked the manager. Schröder brought Eitinga, a former player, and things are getting a little bit better. I think, they've been winning the last few games, although obviously the European campaign was disappointing. 4th win in a row at the weekend. But, they've been very, very poor. Some of the performances, especially in the Champions League, when they shipped 16 goals, were deemed unacceptable. There seemed to be no connection between the manager, the player, and their environment. They started after the World Cup very poorly with 6 draws in a row in January. So they decided, Van der Sar decided to pull the plug, and Schröder went off. But now they play against Union Berlin, which are the surprise package, of course, this year in Bundesliga. They won 5 in a row, beat Leipzig at the weekend, maybe either with a bit of a lucky fashion. I think Leipzig maybe would have deserved a little bit more. They beat Borussia recently. And, it's a very well-drilled side. 3-5-2, they track with pace, they're good on set pieces. Often, if they score first, they don't lose. It's a team that really can keep it tight at the back. In the last 50 games in which they scored the first goal, they won 36 and draw 14. So if they score first, they're very tough to beat. But for a team that has been so good to watch in the Bundesliga, a little bit of an odd stat. All the last 6 matches in Europa League, they finished 1-0. They won 4 games 1-0 and lost a couple of games 1-0 in the last 8 European games, and nobody scored more than once. I think that tells you the story that this team also is able to control the game, slow the tempo a little bit more. They're good in possession. So not necessarily it could be a goal fest here, especially if Ajax are still looking to find their best form. But I'm going to go for over 1 goal in the first half, which pays very good, 1.99. I am expecting somebody to score in the first half. If it's only 1 goal, you get your money back.
Well, probably it pays well because, as you said, Danny, Union Berlin, when they go to Europe, they are pretty defensive. 4 goals scored, 2 goals conceded. All games were binary results in the Europa League. One 0 or 0-1, and they had an easy group, to be honest, with Becker as the top scorer in the Bundesliga with 7 goals. We didn't expect Alvaro Union Berlin to react this well after the World Cup, because it was a team that was going down before the break, but they surprised us with a very good start of the year.
I think so, yeah. And probably they spotted some deficiencies before the World Cup started, and that's why they signed a few players in winter right after the World Cup. And I think that they were very clever, because they signed players, for example, from Croatia or Tunisia. Croatia did a fantastic World Cup. They signed Juranovic, and they also signed a very good footballer, midfielder, Alissa Leidouni from Tunisia. They paid 12 million for them both, and they were doing, or they have done things to correct that dangerous trajectory that they had at the end of October, beginning of November. I think that they are a very fine side, and they are in a great moment, probably one of the best moments in their history, considering that they have never won 5 games in the Bundesliga in a row, and now they have done it. And, some players are stepping up. I mean, it's not only Becker, but also Behrens, for example, has been scoring goals lately. And, it's a surprise package. Yeah, I agree with Daniele. And Union Berlin, it's for me one of the sides that are going to qualify for Europe for the next season. And I don't think that they are going to put a fight until the end in the Bundesliga, but they haven't lost to Bayern this season yet. For example, they drew against them. They have been beaten only by a few sides, one of them being Frankfurt. So that tells you the quality of this side. When it comes to Ajax, look, nothing is lost for them yet. I think that in the Champions League, they had a very tough group. I didn't dislike them massively in the Champions League. For example, against Liverpool in the first half at Johan Cruyff Arena, they were very good. But they just couldn't complete or couldn't finish the chances. I think that some players, they are little by little getting the composure and also the belief that they can be really good footballers. One of them being Kudus, for example, a player that I really like. And I think that up front with Brobbey or with whoever plays up front, Bergwijn, Berghuis, I mean, all these players, they are dangerous for sure. Kudus is scoring many lately. They've got a new goalkeeper because they thought that, they had to do it. And Rulli, is not a goalkeeper who I particularly like a lot. But on the other hand, his distribution is really good. And Ajax was looking for a goalkeeper like that. He's playing in the league, Rulli. And I want to see if he's the number 1 choice for the Europa League as well. But anyway, Ajax is now better. They've got 4 straight wins. They are only 3 points off the pace, which is Feyenoord right now. And I'm going to go for the following. I think Ajax to win is good enough. I think that this time Ajax can beat Union Berlin, and this tie probably will be decided in the second leg. Kudus to score, since he's scoring so many as of late, it triples up your bet. That is very juicy. Kudus to score 3.3.
Well, and we have Stekelenburg still on the bench, for instance, for Ajax. Perhaps.
I don't know if Stekelenburg will be given the Europa League games. I really want to see that, but Jerónimo Rulli is playing in the Eredivisie, and Stekelenburg, the truth is that he is quite veteran right now. So I would prefer to play the Argentinian, really.
Yeah, he must be 45 already, Stekelenburg. Probably this is a tight one. And recently in the Bundesliga or in the German Cup, we've seen Union Berlin with both teams to score. Is a classic result. So Jean Paul, for instance, is going for an over 2.5 goals, a bit agreeing with our experts. This is an interesting one. Ajax Union Berlin, of course, the best fixture in the Europa League is Barcelona Man United, with both giants trying to regain European pedigree, and perhaps this game arrives in the best moment of the season for both teams. We have Barcelona topping La Liga with almost the title in the pocket and very good defensively, and we have Man United, Alvaro, also very dangerous, with Rashford scoring a lot, with Casemiro back in the Europa League because in the Premier League is suspended. So I'm not sure which team is the favorite for this one, for Barcelona and Man United.
That's a good question, actually. Let's see what the bookies say. I mean, according to them, Barcelona and Bayern and the second and third, respectively, to lift the trophy at the end of the season. The first one, by the way, is Arsenal. And here to qualify in this tie, Barcelona is favorite over Manchester United. I'm not going to get involved in that debate of who is better right now, Barcelona or Manchester United. I really want to see how they compare in the Europa League, but Barcelona is looking very good in La Liga right now. The defense of Barcelona has been the key, and I think that one of the defenders, Araujo, I'm happy to say that he's one of the best defenders in the world. I can say that now. He reminds me a lot of Chiellini in a way, especially in the duels, and then he's a bit faster than the Italian. But in the duels, the way he uses his arms, his elbows, he's so clever. He rarely gets booked, and he's a pest for any attacker. Then I think that this game is very important for the self-esteem of Barcelona, especially the game at Old Trafford, but the tie in general, because Barcelona has been defeated lately in the last 5-6 years badly against the best European sides, and this game is very important for them because a year ago, when they played against Frankfurt, that Barcelona was looking good, but it was still like something in construction. Right now, this Barcelona is almost accomplished. And Christensen, Araujo, and Koundé, those three, if they play, they are giving Barcelona some solid structure that Barcelona hasn't had for a long time. And Xavi has spotted something, that he cannot play any player in any game. He has to resort to 11 players plus another 3 who are Kessie, Alba, and Rafinha. And with those 14 players, he is running away with the title, and Barcelona is looking very good right now, for sure. But Manchester United as well, I think Bruno and Rashford, the combination between these two can cause havoc at Camp Nou, because Camp Nou normally is a big, not only that it's a big ground, obviously, because the dimensions of the ground don't differ much from the rest of the grounds, but Barcelona plays really far away from the goalkeeper. And I think that Bruno, with the long balls to Rashford, well, he can definitely create some chances because Rashford cannot stop scoring after the World Cup. Of course, it's a blow for Barcelona to have Busquets out, but Kessie is playing very well. But what about for Manchester United to have Eriksen out with an injury and Savitzer, which we didn't remember, but he was suspended with Bayern, and then therefore he cannot play this game. So Manchester United is going to play with Casemiro and Fred in midfield. It's a physical midfield, but maybe they will miss a little bit the quality of Christian Eriksen, especially. For this game, I'm going for the following. Sorry, guys, if you disagree, but I think that Barcelona's biggest test is going to be at Old Trafford. So I'm going to go for Barcelona to win here, because they are playing at home, 1.8. And if you like Lewandowski to score, obviously, 1.83. But lately, Lewandowski has become more of a provider to Pedri than a scorer. But anyway, there you go. The Polish striker to score 183.
Barcelona really favorite according to the bookies, 1.7 to qualify. By Man United 2.44. But Alvaro has been saying in our La Liga shows, Dani, that Barcelona's defense have to be tested also against top strikers, and this is something that in La Liga we don't have yet. And when they played in the Champions League, for instance, against Bayern Munich or Inter Milan, was another Barca, but it didn't end well. Do you think something similar could happen now with Man United and Barcelona?
Very quickly, Daniel, I don't want to interrupt you, but in the Champions League, Barcelona didn't have Koundé, Araujo, and Christensen together, ever. They were playing with Eric Garcia and Piqué. Do you remember the photography of the game against Inter? Gerard Piqué just putting his head down. That was it. It was a different story.
That's true. It's a different personnel, but also the fact that they only conceded 7 goals in La Liga maybe doesn't speak very well for the La Liga, some of the La Liga attacks that they faced, because they do consider both against Inter, both against Bayern. They considered 4 goals in the Clásicos, and they lost the Clásico La Liga. They won the one in the Super Cup, which maybe was a little bit of a decaf Clásico. So let's see. They have to be tested, and what a better test than playing Man United. It might be the similar story when we were talking about Juventus being so good and with the clean sheet. They traveled to the Maradona. Napoli took the chances and they crumbled. Let's see how it goes. But Man United goes into this game full of confidence, and with the confidence that Ten Hag is slowly finding his best team. He's understanding what his teams are. Probably the transition is not quite there. I would expect in the summer a few coming and goings, but the signs are positive. And there is one stat that really suggests that Den Hag knows his team well. They are first in the Premier League for goals scored in the final 15 minutes, and first for goal scores by substitutes. That means that he knows how to rotate the team. He knows how to make the changes. For example, at the weekend against Leeds, he played Shaw and Maguire. No one would expect them. They both had a good game. Shaw gave an assist to Rashford, and they won that game at Leeds. That maybe last season they would have drew, they would have lost. They scored two, at least two in the last seven games. And Rashford is in the form of his life. Nobody has ever scored more goals than him since the break, since the restart after the World Cup. Is 13 goals, so he's the best striker in Europe for goal per minutes ratio after the World Cup. 21 goals in all competition. He's gonna break his personal record, and he's been training. He's been working with Benny McCarthy as a striker coach, and I think that's helped him. He's helped his movement. He's helped his confidence as well. And then Hag slowly is building the team that he will want to have. So obviously, it is a long stretch, but they come into this one very, very confident. And I don't think they're gonna be beaten heavily. I don't think they're gonna be beaten at all, to be fair. And I'm gonna go for an Asian handicap 0.75 for Manchester United, which pays 191, which means if they win, you win. If they draw, you win. If they lose by one goal, so they don't get trash, is a close defeat, you lose half your stake.
I like this one. Man United to score. Zico is telling us, for instance, Barcelona struggled to score lately. This is also true. Actually, they are winning all the games by 1-0, scored by Pedri. Alvaro, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, very quickly. Lisandro Martinez is out, by the way. And, Maguire and Varane will play together, obviously. This is not as good as having Lisandro on the pitch.
Well, this is a massive game. We saw recently these two teams playing Champions League final twice in the last 15 years, now in Europa League, and they have to regain the pedigree, European pedigree, and confidence. I think so is much more important than just a football game for both big clubs, Barcelona and Man United. But still, we have some more good games, and you forgot to mention, Danny, Roma as one of the finalists of the European Cup.
As a not a winner. I said there are a few finalists scattered here and there, of course. 1980.
You mentioned Monaco, but Roma
1984,
exactly,
the final
losing
against
in
Liverpool.
the penalties in their stadium against Liverpool, or semi-finalists, for instance, some years ago. In the Champions League, Roma going to Salzburg. Roma in Champions League spots in Serie A, thanks probably to, or for sure, to Dybala, and also with the help of Tammy Abraham, but it's a team that we have many doubts, Danny, every time we analyze it in our Serie A show. And I guess Roma, after the defeating Coppa Italia, they should take this game and this competition also very seriously.
Also, I have to say, with the help of the fact that Juventus has been penalized 15 points, which has opened up the Champions League race. But Roma have been decent, have been better since Dybala was back. 1-1 at the weekend against Lecce. They could have won if it wasn't for the Lecce goalkeeper, who made a few fantastic saves. But again, they showed the very stuttery away form. No wins in the last 4 away games. They only kept 2 clean sheets in 14 away games against Salernitana and Sampdoria in Serie A, which are not one of the best attackers by any stretch of imagination, and no clean sheet in the Europa League. I think the Roma side, it's good in their 11, in the starting 11, although with the departure of Zaniolo, the injury to Spinazzola, Kasdrop being frozen out for a bit of the team, I think they are a little bit short. But when it comes to the bench and the changes, it's a bit like Lazio, which we're going to talk about in a minute. It's not really, they don't give you a lot, the substitutes, when they come in. And we saw the Lecce. The changes didn't impact the games. Bellotti still has to score the first goal in Serie A for Roma. If Dybala is not there, the lights goes off completely, and they had a massive goal drought. The good news is that he's fit, he's providing the assist, he's getting involved in the play, and Abraham is building his confidence. I think the break and not going to the World Cup has helped him a lot, and now he's even able to create chances on his own. Sometimes Roma plays route one football, long ball from the keeper, from Rui Patricio, from Smalling, and he's able to get it on his chest turn, get a shot away, things that before he was not able to do. But Roma are becoming, who by the way are the Conference League winner, of course, they are becoming more experienced in knockout games. They build a good pedigree in Europe. They scored in each of the last 33 European games. By the way, the record is PSG 34 in the Champions League over 4 years, 2016, 2020, and they won out of the last 9 knockout games. Last time they were eliminated was Man United in the 2021 semi-finals. But again, is the changes that Mourinho is going to make, is how deep this squad is, and they're going to play a very difficult side, Salzburg, who I thought they were going to qualify at a point from the group with Chelsea and Milan, is a side that held Milan 1-1 and they had chances to win the game. They have beaten Lazio twice in the history of the Europa League, and I think they're going to be tough nut to crack this one for Roma. I don't think Roma are gonna able to win it this one. I'm gonna go for Salzburg Asian handicap 0, which pays 204. If the Austrian wins, you win 204. If they draw, you get your money back.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one for Roma. Always very difficult to trust, also playing away in Serie A. Although, as Danny said, Alvaro, they are building a good European pedigree. Of course, last season they won the conference. 2 years ago, they reached the semifinals of this competition. Some 5 years ago, they reached the semifinals of the Champions League. And Salzburg, it's true that they were close to qualify, but also they conceded 4 in San Siro.
They conceded 4 in San Siro. In the Champions League, they didn't particularly shine, and they got only 1 win. And the truth is that Salzburg, for all the entertaining football that they have been offering lately in the Champions League, then they don't manage to capitalize all that or the goals they can score. And even when they go down to the playoffs of the Europa League, this new round, normally they get knocked out very easily. In fact, they have lost, as soon as they were dropped to the Europa League in the last 2 times. So, this is a side that they are struggling, obviously, with the European best sides in the Champions League. But then when they play against the Europa League best sides, also they are finding it difficult. This season, they haven't scored as many goals as in the previous ones. That's for Salzburg something perhaps a little bit concerning, disappointing, because at the end of the day, this side was about making the games very entertaining, fast-paced. This season, they haven't been able to find the net so often. When it comes to Roma, there is something about Roma that I would like to single out. I think last year, when the big games came, especially in Europe, they started having clean sheets. And this is classic Jose Mourinho. I think that Mourinho still prepares very well the individual games, and in the Conference League we saw that last season, and I think that this could be the time when Roma, I'm not saying that they're going to leave a clean sheet here, but they are going to step up a little bit, and I'm going to go for the reverse bet that Daniele suggested. I'm going to go for a draw no bet for Roma here, which pays 187. In this case, I'm backing Roma slightly. Daniele is backing Salzburg slightly, but with a little bit of a pinch of salt, both of us.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Perhaps also the draw is a good market, following what you guys said. Zico is telling us Salzburg is a stubborn team, and James had a question for our previous game, but I think can be applied for most of our teams here. Like, do either team care about this competition? I think people or clubs care about Europa League.
Well, look at Frankfurt. They are playing in the Champions League right now. Why are they playing in the Champions League?
So I think every single side is going to take this Europa League very seriously. Next game also, this is tough one to call. Shakhtar Rennes. Why do I say it's tough one to call? Because we know nothing about Shakhtar. They haven't played competitive football since November. We know that they were great in the Champions League. I would say even great because they fought against Real Madrid and against Leipzig. And we know, Alvaro, that Rennes, they are in the worst moment of the season, 4 defeats in the last 5 games in Ligue 1, and they are very bad when they travel in Ligue 1. I don't know if you know more about Shakhtar form, but this one looks like a big question mark to me.
It is a massive question mark. Shakhtar Donetsk right now. Unfortunately, this is what we are getting now. They got some players in January, but it's really difficult to test it, really. And the fact that they lost Modric obviously doesn't help a player who moved to Chelsea. I think that we can only take as samples the friendlies that Shakhtar has been playing. The truth is that then in the Champions League they did well. They did a good job. They changed their style dramatically because they don't have the Chervi anymore. They've got Jovanovic as a manager. This manager wants Shakhtar to be a different type of side, probably more robust. Shakhtar 2 years ago was one of the teams in Europe who could keep the possession better, but all the Brazilians left, or the majority of them, and Shakhtar cannot do this now. They have become a more uncomfortable side for the opponent in terms of physicality. And then Rennes, they are doing really bad right now. They are in a bad moment, and as Alain was breaking down in his last video, they've got many problems away from home as well, and this is a side that right now is lacking individuals, personality. The truth is that they are also a little bit of a hit and miss, because they haven't drawn a game since the World Cup. They got 4 defeats in the last 5 games, and this game is definitely difficult to call. It's pretty difficult because at the same time, Shakhtar, despite not having had a lot of competitive football in their legs and despite having lost many players, we saw that in the Champions League they weren't particularly leggy, they weren't particularly weak, and the players show a professionalism that was very commendable. So for this game, I'm gonna support entertainment. I think that, for example, a both teams to score thing can happen. 176. None of the defenses are perfect, not at all. And the scoring rate in the Europa League has been in the group stage something over 2.6. So I think that this can happen again. A double chance for Shakhtar Donetsk is something that I will back here just because probably they will be hyped that they are playing competitive football again. That plays 1.7.
This game is to be played in Warsaw, Danny, and when we check the odds for Shakhtar, you remember that in the Champions League group stages also the bookies give them odds very high, and then they perform well. Perhaps this is the case also, and it's a good chance to back the Ukrainian team because of
I think we underestimated them at the beginning because we didn't know them much, and obviously it doesn't help playing the league the way they are playing. But the truth is that they only lost 1 home game so far this season. It was the 4-0 to Leipzig in the last game where they could have even qualified for the knockout stage of the Champions League. So they went there in with a chance. Leipzig is a much stronger team, is much deeper squad, and Shakhtar couldn't really act the plan, counter-attacking or getting the ball to Mudryk as much as they wanted. But it is a side that had chances to win games in the Champions League, especially against Celtic. I remember away from home, they had a few chances. So don't underestimate them really. And yes, obviously they are a bit of an unknown quantity, but so are Rennes in a way, because a team that on the 15th of January beat PSG at home, and then they lose 4 in the last 5, and against Toulouse, newly promoted side, they conceded 3 in the first half hour, like rookie mistakes, as the manager said, Genesio. So they're really, really difficult to read. They are -7 from Monaco this season. So at the moment, so if you look at them, you might think whether they're going to qualify for Europe next season at all. There are big games coming up for Rennes as well. They got Marseille, PSG, Lens again coming up soon. So this is a tough side, but it also is a tough time for Rennes. Maybe there might be a few rotations. I like the both to score here. 192. Rennes have been decent in Europe, but I think this Shakhtar Donetsk, really, you can't just underestimate it because you don't know them. We do know that we have seen them. There are some young players that are good. Of course, without Mudryk is a different complexion. But yeah, 192 both to score for me.
Indeed. Well, we have more information about the next fixture, Leverkusen, Monaco. You mentioned Monaco in the best moment of the season right now in League 1, in Champions League spots. They were able, for instance, at the weekend to beat PSG. We have Ben Yedder scoring plenty of goals. And Danny, we have Leverkusen. It's been a tough season for them. At least they finished third in their Champions League group. This is going to be their first European game, by the way, for Xabi Alonso on the bench. And it's a nightmare, to be honest, to make tips about Leverkusen in the Bundesliga.
It's difficult because in Europe they've been dreadful. I mean, also because they changed the manager halfway through, but only one win in the last 9 European games, 6 games without scoring. But things are improving under Xabi Alonso. He had a good spell recently, and the fact that that he came just before the World Cup break, I think he helped him to get his head in place. And I like the fact that he's giving up a little bit his idea of possession football, trying to dominate the ball, lot of rotations up front for a more solid way of playing, get them stabilized at the back. And the first things he did, he switched to a back three with the Nkapie, Soba and Ta, Bakker and Frimpong as a wing backs, so they become much tough to beat. They become more solid. He's a young side as well with a lot of energy. They won 3-1 at the weekend, by the way, obviously helped by the fact that Florian Wirtz came back. This, a 19-year-old had a very bad injury. He's the youngest German player to hit double figures in the history of Bundesliga. So it is a talent, and not having them for them has been difficult. The link up with Diaby, I think, is good. So they're gonna be. I think things are looking up for Leverkusen. It's gonna be tough for them to finish in Europe for next season. For this one, obviously against Monaco, is the opposite. Bad form in Europe, only 1 clean sheet in the last 10 away Europa League games. They're not very consistent, but they're unbeaten in 9 games. And Ben Yedder has scored already 14 goals in the season so far in the Ligue 1. And against PSG, they could have scored 4 or 5 if it wasn't for Donnarumma. Especially Golovin has been really, really impressive recently. I think he's really mercurial. When he turns on, is the difference, not only because he's very creative, but also because he puts a shift defensively, he runs, covers a lot of the pitch. So really, it depends whether the Russian is inspired or not, but there might be a chance for Folland, who, by the way, used to play for Leverkusen as well and left some good memories there. I don't think Monaco going to lose this one, actually. I'm going to go for X2. I think the odds for Leverkusen to win are way, way, way too high. 193. I like the X2 for Monaco in this case.
Well, I mentioned at the beginning, Alvaro, that Leverkusen is very tough to predict, but I have to say also that Monaco is been a roller coaster this season, and especially in Europe in the last seasons, they are far from being reliable. Remember that they finished second in a group with Ferencváros or Trabzonspor, and they've been kicked out of the Champions League playoff in the recent years.
Yeah, that was not fun to watch in the Europa League group stage because it was very difficult to bet on Monaco. I remember that we were just trying to make the most of it, but it has been a difficult to read side, Monaco. However, I'm going to tell you something. They have scored 51 goals in the Ligue 1. 51 goals in the Ligue 1. And Bayer Leverkusen has conceded 32 goals in 20 games in the Bundesliga. So that points me straight away to the both teams to score market. Really, 163. It doesn't pay a lot, but still, I'm going to keep that even for the ACCA because I think that this is not a certainty, obviously, because you never know, but goals are a big possibility here. Comment of appreciation for Wissam Ben Yedder. I think that he is one of the best strikers of his generation. The reason why he doesn't have more silverware or perhaps a bigger reputation is because he's French, and France has a lot of talent up front. But if he was Spanish, Dutch, or Italian, and Daniele, you can correct me if I am wrong, I think he would have played for the national side more often. Totally. Yeah, because I'm mentioning 3 national sides who definitely have needed a very good striker in the last decade, definitely. So he scored against PSG and he was fantastic again. Very short player, but with a lot of quality, strong, low center of gravity. And, Monaco plays with the direct play right now. And it's in the Europa League, by the way, the team that has recovered more balls despite having an average of a 51% possession. So they don't recover balls because they don't have it. No, they recover balls because they recover it very quickly despite having a lot of possession. So they are very good in the duels, and they are playing against Bayer Leverkusen, who has certain level of dangerosity. At the end of the day, Moussa Diaby and Frimpong, they have assisted each other for 6 goals in the season, which is one of the records in the Bundesliga. Florian Wirtz, well, is back little by little. Of course, he hasn't scored a goal for a year now. I think his last goal came the 12th of February 2022. But anyway, it's good news that he's back. So both teams to score. I like it, 163. You can up it a little bit to over 2.5 goals, but I'm happy to stay with both teams to score.
Okay, next game we have is Juventus Nantes. Nantes, they've been having a tough season, to be honest, but now they are recovered. They are far from the relegation spots, 3 consecutive victories, alive also in Coupe de France, and some weeks ago, Danny, our French expert, Alain Valnegri, told us, be careful with this fixture for Juventus, because Juventus were through a rough patch. Now they beat Lazio and Fiorentina, keeping clean sheets. But with the recovery of Nantes, he thought he might be a dangerous game for Juventus. Do you think Nantes can harm Juve?
I think Juventus were lucky because they draw the weakest side of all in this draw, which is Nantes. Is the side that's got less European pedigrees. By the way, these two met in the 95-96 Champions League semi-final. What a classic!
Semi-final, yeah.
4-3.
Wow.
What a classic! That was a great game. But ever since Nantes, we really don't remember Nantes playing in Europe much. Last season they won the Coupe de France, and they had an easier route probably to the final. They didn't meet any of the big guns. And I think this season, they can count themselves lucky to have qualified. For Juventus, this is the competition. This is a massive chance to play in Champions League next season because they've been penalized 15 points. Maybe more points might be deducted soon. So this is really what they need to achieve this season. Make sure they get to the final. Make sure they win this trophy. Whatever happens with the Italian justice system, they could be in the Champions League next season. Maybe even if they play in Serie B. Who knows? But look, Juventus, they're not used to playing this competition. They played, this is the first game in 84 European games that they play in the Europa League. The last time they played in the Europa League is 2014, the semi-final against Benfica home that they lost at penalties. Then they played always in the Champions League. They're not been very successful in the Champions League, we must say, although in the process they reached 2 finals, 2015, 2017, but they haven't reached the highs that they wanted to reach. And they crashed out of a group which everyone thought it was easy. So obviously the European season of Juventus has been really, really disappointing so far. Now Allegri has got back some of the key players, especially Chiesa, which allows him to play with 3 up front. With Fiorentina, they did it pretty well in the first half, creating a few chances. They won 1-0, but they had more chances to score. Let's see if he goes again with this attacking side in a competition that really he needs to target. And I don't buy into the idea Juventus are so solid defensively, they kept so clean, so many clean sheets. That's not true. They have been good, don't get me wrong. Szczesny has been in very good form. The back 3 of Alexandro, Danilo, and Bremer doesn't convince me. The oppositions in Italy sometimes haven't taken the chances. As soon as they did, like Napoli or Monza or Atalanta, the goals start flowing. So really, Juventus' strength is not the defense. Juventus' strength should be from midfield up with the likes of Rabiot, Kostic, and obviously the aforementioned front 3, including Di Maria when he's fit. I think Nantes are a bit of an unknown quantity. Juventus only lost 1 game at home so far this season, 2-0 to Monza, and they never lost 4 consecutive games in Europe after losing, of course, 3 in the group stages. The Juventus win doesn't pay very well. I'm going to keep it for my best bet. I'm going to go for a statistical one, which I normally don't use. I'm going to use Asian handicap Juventus corners -1. I think Juventus is going to have most of the ball. I'm going to attack more. They're going to have at least 1 more corner or 2 more corners than Nantes. In Serie A, at home, Juventus averages 5.25 corners per game. Nantes, when they play away in League One, averages 4.08 corners per game. So, if he stays with the mean, Juventus will have 2 more corners at least than Nantes. And we need a bet, Asian corners -1.
And another reason to back Juventus, Alvaro, is because Nantes, they are awful when they travel. We saw it also in Ligue 1 and even in the Europa League. It's true that they won in Athens against Olympiacos, but they lost against Karabakh, they lost against Freiburg, and they suffer far from La Beaujoire.
They do, and I think that this tie is one-sided for Juventus. I wanted to make a question to Daniele because I've seen the defensive numbers of Juventus in the Serie A, and they are good. But you are saying that when they play like a really good opposition, they tend to crumble, right?
Yeah.
But isn't it Nantes exactly one of these sides that Juventus can leave a clean sheet against? Because I checked the clean sheet for Juve, 185 is good. And I know that there is a caveat in there, which is the fact that the away goal rule don't exist anymore. So there is one little less incentive to leave a clean sheet. But still, Daniele, do you think Nantes is scoring here?
It is true that this season, against mid-table lower opposition in Serie A, Juventus has kept a lot of clean sheet against the likes of Udinese, Spezia, and so on and so forth. But I'm never too convinced about the Juventus side. If you look at the numbers of expected goals against, Juventus are much higher, and that tells you the story. Szczesny has been the factor there, so I would never be 100% sure on that. Of course, it is a good bet, but the numbers suggest that Juventus defensively is not as good as it looks like.
Okay, so give a new contract to Szczesny then.
But
I guess
it's been amazing. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
And you
I
saw
guess that
him
is the conclusion.
you saw him at the World Cup. It's been very good.
He was good, yeah. So, I think that in this case, after what Daniele said, despite Juve having 10 clean sheets at home this season and all that, I'm going to go for Juventus to win and over 1.5 goals, a little combination there. And I'm going to tell you that pays 162, which is, I think, about right, really. Dusan Vlahovic, who has been not great this season, but still he's finding his form now. He has encountered it. Dusan Vlahovic to score, doubles up your bet. That's if you want to dig in the individual market, this is the best thing you can find. And Rennes, just to give you a few more details about this side, they haven't beaten in the league the top 5, PSG, Marseille, Lens, Monaco, and Lille. So against big opposition this season, they haven't been particularly punchy.
Well, keeping up with the good teams, Juventus, of course, in the Europa League, and also we have the king of the kings of the Europa League coming next, Sevilla, PSV, and with Sevilla now, Alvaro, that they can take a look at their favorite competition because they are far from danger, or out of danger, not that far, to be honest. In La Liga, they are far from relegation because they've been winning the games at home, 4 consecutive victories in the Sanchez Pizjuan, and now they face a PSV. Is going to be a tough one. They finished second in their group after Arsenal. They are still fighting for the Eredivisie title, and we have Luke de Jong, for instance, coming back to Sanchez Pizjuan.
Yes. Luke de Jong, I mean, he was important for Sevilla that season, the 1920.
He scored us 2 goals. I remember him very well in that final.
Yeah. Daniele is still waking up in the middle of the night, shouting like a veteran from Vietnam.
Godin, pick him up on that corner.
Didn't happen, Daniele. Didn't happen. What can we say? Diego Carlos was very good with Koundé stopping Romelu Lukaku or trying to stop him as well. I remember in that final. But we're talking about Diego Carlos, about Koundé, about De Jong. They are all gone. Sevilla has suffered a transformation. And one thing that is a bit annoying for Sevilla, I guess, is that one of their signings, Pape Gueye, who played really well against Mallorca the other day, wasn't registered in the Europa League. But anyway, the other day against Mallorca, Sevilla convinced me, persuade me that this side can be better. Because the last 3 wins at home had been against the sides who are in relegation spots. But this time they beat Mallorca after Mallorca beat Real Madrid. And Sevilla against Mallorca were great in the first half. They created plenty of chances. It's been so important for Sevilla, in my opinion, to keep Youssef El-Nesyri, because they were saying that he could go to West Ham. He didn't want to go there. He could go to Nice. He didn't mind to go there for 20 million. And I was like, this is not a good business, because can't you get a player of the quality of El-Nesyri for that money? I really don't think so. So, Sevilla is in a better moment right now. And I think that they will play this Europa League with less pressure than some other years, perhaps, because they've got nothing else to play for, really. Last season, we saw Sevilla being slow against West Ham United, and they lost that tie. But this time, they've got a different physicality. Some new players have come. I still believe that the midfield is a little bit rigid, slow. But, the addition of Ocampos coming back from Ajax can help for the league, of course. And then, I think that Sevilla at home against PSV might be a slightly favorite. Not for the tie, I wouldn't go that far, but Sevilla to win 230, it's decent money. And Sevilla with an Asian handicap minus 0.25, neighboring the 1.9 odd is pretty good as well. PSV, well, let's say clearly, they have been very good in the group stage. They scored 15 goals. They are the highest scoring side of the Europa League so far. But in their group, they had Arsenal, obviously, and that wasn't easy. Gakpo left. He scored 3 goals in the process in the Europa League. And a few new players came, like Torgan Hazard, for example, who can be important. Fabio Silva, who I don't think that he will be important because I don't rate this Portuguese striker. But anyway, I think that Sevilla to win is good enough, 2.3, on the basis of what I saw against Mallorca the other day, because Mallorca is a very good side in La Liga.
Alvaro is a believer of Sevilla, and he's getting many tips right because he backs Sevilla at home. Exactly. He backs Sevilla at home. Danny, do you see problems for the king of the Europa League?
I think if Sevilla wins this one, it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think PSV, also without Madueke, who left, yes, of course, they are fourth in the table, won 6-0 at the weekend of Groningen, but I think Sevilla, they're not outscoring teams a lot, but they might be able to keep the scoring down, maybe under 2.5 goals, which is my tip, by the way, 196, and manage to shut the door. PSV lost all the last 3 away games. They conceded 11 goals. They seem to me a little bit unbalanced, and I don't think they have improved a lot on last season when they were scoring a lot of goals, but still can keep the clean sheets. And, Sevilla, I mean, as you mentioned, the kings of the Europa League, they're very good on knockout games, especially in this competition. They won 22 of the last 24, lost only 1 knockout home Europa League games in the Europa League, and that was against Atletico Bilbao in 2016. So it was a derby. 15 clean sheets in the process. So there is a know-how. I know there is a very much changed, but there's a know-how that going there to the Sanchez pitch one and not conceding a goal, really. That's what we should do for Sevilla. I trust Alvaro in this one. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, under 2.5 goals, 196. Most likely outcome is a win for Sevilla. Yeah.
And the last game we have is Sporting Lisbon Midtjylland. Well, this is not really appealing for the middle football fan, but we have Sporting really favorites. They were good in the Champions League, actually, in their group. They were close to qualify, Alvaro, and we have Midtjylland. They are the team with higher odds to win the Europa League, so the real underdog of this competition, and they were in a crazy group, kicking out, remember, Lazio from this competition. Yes. They all finished with 8 points. Feyenoord, Midtjylland, Lazio, and Sturm Graz. No competitive football for Midtjylland also since November.
Yeah, the last time they played competitive football was, as you said, back in autumn, and they ended up with 3 draws and 1 defeat in the last 4 games in the Danish league, and then in the Europa League, yes, they were somehow convincing, getting wins at home against Lazio, 5-1, getting wins against Sturm Graz by 2-0, but then away from home, it was a very different story for Midtjylland. In fact, in the group stage, they just didn't win away. They lost to Sturm Graz, they drew with Feyenoord, and they lost to Lazio. So this game is a little bit one-sided, I think. On top of that, the player who has given more assists in the tournament, Evander, left for Midtjylland. He left the club. So obviously, Sporting Club de Portugal is going to benefit from that. They've got a new players, Sporting, for example, Bellerin, who the other day played against Porto only 55 minutes, but I don't think he's match fit for 90 minutes. No way. And it was a bad defeat for Sporting Club de Portugal because they lost to Porto for the 5th time in a row, which is the first time that happens in history. Rubén Amorim defined the team, Sporting Club de Portugal, like a bipolar team. They are capable of the best, they are capable of the worst. In the Champions League, they were hit and miss, even though they were very nice evenings for them, like when they beat Tottenham. But still, they are 15 points off the pace in Portugal. Does that mean that they have no chance against Midtjylland? No, I don't think so. I think that they are favorites for this game. Obviously, the money for Sporting Club de Portugal to win this game is not great, so I'm going to go for Sporting Club de Portugal to win the second half. I think that this is a variation of winning that can give you better revenue. That pays 161. I'm going to stick to that.
James McKean is asking us, Danny, no Lazio game? Well, there is no Lazio game in the Europa League because they were kicked out by Midtjylland.
They play with Cluj in the Conference League, James. I think they're going to make a lot of changes to this one, but I think they should be winning. Yes, Lazio Cluj should be at least a nation handicap 1 for Lazio. Quickly on the Sporting Lisbon, Midtjylland. Sporting Lisbon lost at the weekend against Porto 2-1. It is a side that lost Pedro Porro, of course, so Bellerin is the new one of the new wing back. They did well to keep going until the end against Porto, and the loss created a few chances. They are good. They're a good side at home. They won the last 4 home games in the Europa League, lost only 4 of 35 home games in the Europa League. Obviously, they shocked Tottenham with a very good performance with Marcus Edwards, with one of the revelation of this campaign in the Conference League. But in the end, they crumbled. They looked almost assured to go through, and they couldn't. It's a very strange feeling, I think, this one also for the Spanish viewers, because Midtjylland are managed by Albert Capellas, former Barcelona, you say, Trincao, Bellerin, both former Barcelona and Sporting Lisbon. There's a lot of Spanish interest really in this one. But for Midtjylland, no wins in the last 7 away European games. And they lost in the UCL knockouts 3-1 to Benfica, 4-1 in the return game. They lost the few games in the Europa League as well. Only 1 clean sheet in the last 10 European games. So again, the loss against Benfica this season, Sporting Lisbon is quite up there with Benfica. I think they're going to win it. They're going to win the first half. 188 for Sporting to win the first half.
Okay, I'm not particularly thrilled by this Sporting Midtjylland despite the Spanish interest in this game. We have 2 variations. Either you go for the Sporting victory, Alvaro goes in the second half, Danny goes for the first half. Well, a lot of good games we have on Thursday, a lot of interest. Also, we have the playoffs for the conference, for instance, Braga-Fiorentina. But Danny, we are focusing the Europa League, and you already mentioned your safe bet, but can you please tell us again?
Juventus to beat Nantes. 142 back in 95-96. They won the semi-final 2-0, by the way. You can look it up after you watch the video on YouTube, of course.
Retro football. And Alvaro?
Asian handicap -3 for Midtjylland. No. Seriously speaking. Bayer Leverkusen, Monaco, both teams to score 163.
That's one.
Okay, and let's go with Yorak, Alvaro.
Yeah, draw no bet for Sevilla, Juventus to win, Leverkusen, Monaco, both teams to score, Asian handicap -0.25 for Ajax, altogether 651.
All right, we have it in the screen. And Danny, your turn.
Barcelona, Manchester United over 1.5 goals. Bayer Leverkusen, Monaco, both teams to score. Juventus, Asian handicap -0.25. In the -0.25, yes, in the first half against Nantes, and Sporting Lisbon to beat Midtjylland, total odds 538.
You both agree in the both teams to score for the Leverkusen Monaco. It's been a great video as always. Alvaro, Danny, I learned a lot about European football. See you next week. Thanks everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget, press the like and subscribe. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.